Okay, we've all heard of a broken bone, right? But what if I told you the snap of the bone isn't always the real emergency? What if a simple, everyday fracture was actually hiding something way more dangerous? A secret that could threaten the entire limb? I mean, think about it. You fall, you hear that awful crack, and you know you're probably getting a cast for a few weeks. It seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? The bone's broken, so the game plan is to keep it still and let it heal. Simple. But what if that snap wasn't the scariest part of the injury? What if that fracture took something else out with it? Something absolutely vital. And suddenly, you're on the clock for a much, much bigger problem. And that brings us right to the heart of what we're talking about today. So, picture this. You've got a patient with a closed fracture. That just means the bone hasn't poked through the skin. A medic is checking them out, and they see these 4 signs. Now, 3 of these are basically giant, flashing neon signs screaming, damaged artery. But one is a total red herring. It's pointing to a completely different, but just as serious, danger. So which one is it? Okay, so to figure out which one is the imposter, we first need to know what the real clues look like. In the world of emergency medicine, they have what are called hard signs of an arterial injury. These are the undeniable classic signs that a major blood vessel, an artery, has been seriously damaged, maybe even torn or completely severed. And there are 3 classic ones to look for. First up, a weak or even absent pulse downstream from the injury. And that makes sense, right? If the main pipe is broken, the flow gets cut off. The other 2 big ones are something called a pulsatile expanding hematoma and a palpable thrill. Let's break that down. The key word here is pulsatile. I mean, a hematoma is really just a bruise, but when an artery is the source of the bleeding, that blood is pumping out under some serious pressure, straight from the heart. So you're not just going to see a simple bruise. Nope. You're going to see a swelling that's growing fast and it's literally pulsing in time with the person's heartbeat. It's a super dramatic sign of a big internal bleed. All right, the next one is a palpable thrill. This is pretty cool, actually. When that high-pressure blood shoots out of a damaged artery, it creates all this turbulence under the skin. So if you were to put your hand over the injury, you would actually feel this buzzing or vibration. The classic analogy is it feels like a cell phone on silent, just vibrating in your pocket. It's a very real physical sign that there's a high-pressure leak somewhere in the system. Okay, so let's recap. We've got our 3 big clues for an arterial injury: a missing pulse, a swelling that pulses with a heartbeat, and that weird buzzing feeling. Now let's circle back to our original mystery. Which of the signs we listed earlier doesn't fit with this crew?
And the answer, the red herring, is disproportionate pain. I know, that sounds weird, right? I mean, of course a major injury is going to hurt a lot. But it turns out that this specific type of off-the-charts overwhelming pain is actually the classic sign of a completely different emergency.
And this is where things get really interesting. If this crazy, searing pain isn't the main signal for a torn artery, well, what else could it be? What other kind of emergency could be threatening the limb? The real culprit here, the thing causing that awful, unique pain, is a condition called compartment syndrome. And yeah, it can also happen because of a fracture, but how it injures you is totally different. See, the muscles in your arms and legs aren't just kind of floating around in there. They're actually bundled up really tightly inside this tough, almost leathery sleeve of tissue called fascia. And this sleeve creates a sealed-off space, a compartment. Now, normally, that's a good thing. It helps everything work right. But after an injury, that compartment can turn into a serious trap. Here's how it goes down. So first, you get the injury, and that causes bleeding and swelling, just like you'd expect. But here's the kicker. That tough fascia sleeve doesn't stretch at all. So all that fluid, all that blood and swelling gets trapped inside the compartment with nowhere to go. The pressure just starts to build and build, kind of like pumping way too much air into a tire. And eventually, the pressure inside gets so intense that it literally starts to crush everything in there. The blood vessels, the nerves, cutting off their own supply of blood and oxygen. And that insane internal pressure is what causes that disproportionate pain we were talking about. The pain isn't really coming from the broken bone anymore. It's coming from the muscles and nerves inside that compartment literally screaming for oxygen as they're being choked off. People who've had it describe it as this deep, burning, searing pain that just doesn't stop. And it's way, way worse than what you'd think a broken bone should feel like. So here's the big takeaway. A single injury, like a fracture, can kick off 2 totally different but equally dangerous emergencies. And each one has its own unique calling card. Let's actually put them side by side so the difference is crystal clear. Okay, so on one hand, you've got the direct arterial injury. This is all about blood flow, right? It's defined by those hard signs, the missing pulse, the pulsing bruise, the buzzing thrill. Think of it like a major plumbing problem. But then on the other hand, you have compartment syndrome, and its number one early warning sign is that crazy out of proportion pain. And here's what makes it so sneaky. In the early stages of compartment syndrome, the pulse down in the foot or hand might still be totally normal, which can make it really tricky to catch. And look, this isn't just some interesting medical trivia. Getting this wrong, mixing these two up, can have absolutely devastating consequences. They are both limb-threatening emergencies, and they both need immediate help, but the treatment for each is different. So being able to spot the right clues from the get-go it's absolutely critical. It's just a really powerful reminder that in medicine, the thing you see first, the obvious injury, isn't always the most dangerous thing going on. So now that you know how to spot the difference between these two hidden dangers, it kind of makes you wonder, right? What else are first responders trained to look for? What other critical signs are hiding in plain sight behind what looks like just a common, everyday injury?